Continuing with lesson number 6. No course of instruction would be complete without including that all-important subject, procreation, more loosely referred to as sex. For within this dimension we can find very important clues or keys to human behaviorism, as well as to factually integrate mankind in the scale of evolution. Therefore, the importance of this subject cannot be overemphasized, for deep within the psychic anatomy of every human being are certain strong complexes which were originated and motivated in this dimension of human relationships. Procreation itself enables humanity to reincarnate from one life to the next, taking with them from life to life the various aggregates of their personal traits, which they have thus developed in these various lifetimes, and in these various aggregates polarized all-important higher self. As of today, this branch of procreation is referred to scientifically and classically as genetics, and the associated physiological inferences of psychology are still in complete darkness as to the true and originating sources and functions of these sciences. As a consequence, there is just as much misunderstanding, misconception, and unadulterated falsity as there is in all other branches of science, simply because, in general, these sciences have always given the strong indication that such sciences were based upon such third-dimensional aspects, which contain the various reactionary elements of this third dimension and the presupposed laws governing these reactions. And as in all cases, the scientist had not yet discovered or oriented into his science the true originating sources and causes of his third-dimensional sciences. Freudianism, as the basis for modern psychology, is compounded from various material elements of human behavior patterns, with sex as the strongest motivating element. While sex is very important in everyday human relationship, yet here again such material, physical, sexual psychology does not include fourth-dimensional or spiritual factors. While sexual behaviorisms in humans have always been much more pronounced than in plant and animal species, this does not necessarily indicate perverted tendencies, particularly at this time when a synthetic civilization so pressurizes people that sex is often a deviation or an escape mechanism. However, it must be borne in mind that individually or collectively, human beings are entering into a metamorphosis of character when they begin to pass from the earth life and start their evolution into higher spiritual dimensions, where sex and procreation are not physical in nature, but are more highly developed activities associated with various inductive polarities. Generally speaking, procreation in a physical sense is confined within the dimension of genetics. In the latter half of the 19th century, an Austrian monk named Mendel observed certain behaviorisms in the various plants in his monastery garden. From this beginning, a number of contemporaries of Mendel have built up this genetical science, which is incidentally becoming less efficacious in solving aspects of procreative ability as other sciences introduce other different aspects. Percentage-wise, this genetical science is only partially correct, and there are great unsolved mysteries presently posed in the mind of the geneticist. It is believed that procreation is carried on from one generation to the next through the combination of certain elements present in the process of insemination, specifically the ovum, the female life cell, and the spermatozoon, the male life cell. It is supposed that these cells contain all of the elements of character of the species who created them, not only of the parents, but also definite characteristics of other generations, genealogically speaking. These characteristics are contained in the chromosomes or genes. These chromosomatic elements always vary in number according to species. For instance, a mouse is supposed to have 120, human 48, elephants 11, etc. There are some obvious disparities here. If elements of character could be numbered, why then would a comparatively advanced human being have less than 1/2 the number of those of a tiny mouse? The geneticist does not know the answer to this mystery. There are other mysteries and mysterious suppositions currently in circulation. Some medical practitioners and geneticists believe that in humans it is necessary for the male to ejaculate more than 3 million spermatozoa into the vaginal tract before insemination can occur, even though they know that any one of the 3 million odd spermatozoa can do the job. For out of this vast number of tiny germ cells, which are shaped like tadpoles, one will wiggle or swim around until it finds the ovum, which it penetrates, causing impregnation. Herein again enters another mystery. A certain branch of genetics, known as parthenogenesis, has produced frogs, chickens, and turkeys without the male parent. By pricking the outside membrane of the ovum with a very fine needle, the ovum will then become pregnant, start to grow, and after the usual gestation period, will hatch into a tadpole or chick and grow to adulthood, apparently normal in every respect. At this stage of our introspection, it is quite clear to see that there are many factors and elements involved in these various life processes of reproduction about which the scientist knows nothing. We can also find more missing elements the further we pursue our analysis. For instance, genetics cannot explain certain overdeveloped precocities or genius characteristics in humans. The Mendelian ratio of 1:4 and various intermediate ratios do not apply, except rather loosely, in the general field of physical characteristics. Mental characteristics have never been fully explained by such inductive ratios. In our previous lessons, we have explained indirectly these various missing elements, that evolution was always sustained from the spiritual or fourth dimensional side, and that the third dimension was the terminating point of this fourth dimensional cycle. The earth, in turn, supported the material counterpart expressed in this dimension. Science does not know that the various characteristics, attributes, and proclivities of plants, animals, and especially humans are thus carried in the psychic anatomies from one generation to the next, and are only produced in facsimile by atomic forms and their combinations, which produce molecules and cells. Likewise, various mental elements are transmigrated. In this process of human relationships, a vast number of association factors are thus built up. In this process, certain polarity patterns are developed, which revolve around other certain individuals, which become more and more closely related to each other, in this polarity development pattern. In these more primitive beginnings, we can trace the development of two humans coming and going through numerous lifetimes in various positions of association. They may be mother, father, son, daughter, sister, husband, or wife, etc. Sex, too, is subject to change in succeeding lives, as these two humans thus progress along the pathway of evolution. They become more strongly developed in respect to each other. We can see about us numerous examples of these strongly developed patterns. Public figures such as the Nixons, the Eisenhowers, etc., where in such cases you will see not only certain strong physical resemblances, but also great mental and spiritual strength is manifest between these two people. Other specific examples are seen in identical twins. Certain sexual deviates are finding present polarities, mentally reversed to that of a previous lifetime, wherein they lived as a member of the opposite sex, or they may even vicariously assume opposite sex characteristics by a strong and dominant love for their other polarity. In the Oedipus complex, sexual love of a child for the parent is a reversion, physically speaking, to a previous life as husband and wife, and such associated strong sex complexes. Thus you see the strong dominant factors of human relationships are not contained in the genes, but are actually contained in the vortexes of energy waveforms which comprise the psychic anatomy and which are transmuted, so to speak, in the scale of individual evolution from one life to the next, and beginning each lifetime with insemination. How is this done, you may ask? Partially through the various association factors which give certain strong frequency relationships or attunements with the various waveform agencies involved, and partially through a catalytic process instigated by strong mental activity called psychokinetics, which creates a concentrated flow of energy into certain specific areas which, when so combined or touched, regenerate into certain facsimiles of waveform vortexes, thus creating a new individual human anatomy and a subsequent life cycle, which is keyed, harmonically speaking, to the respective psychic anatomies which originally induced this process. Breaking down this concept more simply, let us create a hypothetical situation. A man and a woman meet physically. Referring to the base plane rate of their respective psychic anatomies, we will say that they vibrate harmoniously. They may be either totally strangers or they may have known each other in previous lifetimes. However, in either case, there may still be sufficiently strong psychic attunement, harmonically speaking, to create and induce the necessary reactions which will lead up to conception. These reactions are always consequently increased in proportion to the inclusion of various association factors which may have taken place between them in other lives. In any case, the sum and total of such psychic vibratory reaction, being sufficiently strong, will stimulate or excite these two persons in that emotional complex which people generally call love. If this reaction is strong enough to overcome any subconscious differences, the insemination process is quite likely to occur. Let us examine what happens at the time of insemination and conception. Referring to our previous concept of the atom and its own fourth-dimensional vortex, the spermatozoon and ovum are, as is everything else, composed of these same atomic structures. These atomic structures are linked and relinked through their various electromagnetic fields to all other energy structures, vortexes, etc., in the psychic anatomy. The psychic anatomy is thus so vibrating, we shall say, in unison in a certain direction. That is, it is concentrating in a united effort during the process of insemination. In the physical anatomy, this concentration results in that sexual cycle of intense passion always felt at such times. The intensity of this passion is, of course, relative to the amount of psychic attunement between these two persons who were so involved, or in other experiences with which they were harmonically attuned. Now, this process of the psychic animation, sexually speaking, a great number of other combinations of waveforms, attunements, occur. These combinations regenerate or form a large number of harmonic waveforms, which contain in themselves their respective equivalents to their parent waveforms and psychic vortexes.